Hey, what's up, everyone? This is part 5, our final teaching on our series, The Church, where we've been talking all about what the church is, what God's people are. We've been asking the questions, who are we? What is this all about? We've been talking through all kinds of different elements of what make us who we are and how we're acting out the vision of Jesus in the world. And hopefully, for you and all of our small groups, it's generated some really good discussion and has also challenged each of us to rethink some of the ways that we often approach the people of God. And so in part 5, in this session, we want to land this discussion on the church and ask the question, what do we do with all of this? Over these past few weeks, all the things we've talked about, what do we do with all of this, not just information, but all of these different things to think about? Our study of the church should lead us, I think, to a response. As we understand who the people of God are, what our mission is in the world, all the facets of the institution of the church and the organic church, I think our study should lead us to a moment of response. And when I say response, I don't mean an altar call moment or an emotionalized, we can do it guys moment, but it's a deliberate, thoughtful decision to reorder how we may have viewed the church and pick up an active role in building the church and forwarding Jesus' mission of spreading his kingdom around the world. That's the response I think every one of us should be brought to through this study. Because this is true, I think, when I or you or we misunderstand what Jesus' mission is all about, and therefore what the church's job is, it becomes so easy to just be a spectator. And even if I do reconcile, if I have a good understanding of, and I've processed through many of the pitfalls we've talked about over the past few weeks, even if I do have a good theology of the church and genuinely tie my heart and my life to the people of God, I can still miss out on Jesus' mission for his people if I refuse to actually put all of that knowledge and robust theology into practice. That is to say, I can think a lot about a bunch of different things and I can have some really good ideas about different things, but if I don't actually put it into practice, what's the point? It's fully apparent in our 21st century Western culture, both inside the church and outside the church, that we have so much access to information, yet very little actualization of even foundational principles. Sally Morgenthaler writes, "We are not producing worshipers in this country. Rather, we're producing a generation of spectators, religious onlookers, lacking in many cases any memory of a true encounter with God, deprived of both the tangible sense of God's presence and the supernatural relationship their inmost spirits crave." Now, being fully honest and fair, the responsibility does not always lie with the individual members of the community. It's true that organizations and leaders and church structures can contribute to this as well. With the best of intentions, we've often tried to make church gatherings a comfortable environment for both believers and seekers where we can all learn about God together. But what recent brain research has shown us is that when a person is comfortable, the more analytical functions of the brain necessary for learning remain disengaged. Psychologists refer to the brain as having a system 1 and a system 2. And system 1 is the more intuitive functioning that is active when we're relaxed, like when vegetating in front of the TV or listening to a simple, clear sermon in a comfy seat on a Sunday morning. System 2 is the analytical functioning of the brain that is required to rethink assumptions, challenge ideas, and construct new behaviors and beliefs. System 2 must be active in order for us to learn. Research shows us that the brain shifts gears from system 1 to system 2 when it is forced to work, when we're challenged or stretched, when we are required to step outside of our comfort zones, and when we move from being consumers to contributors. It's true that church members, just like airline pilots, don't thrive by being under-challenged, over-comforted, or by taking a hands-off approach, but by turning off the autopilot and being forced to take control of their own relationship with God. We have all, leaders included, been guilty at times of compromising the nature and mission of the church and simply refusing to truly take part. But the encouraging thing is, just as we've talked about a few teachings ago, Jesus is always excited when his people return to the true vision he's always had for his people. He's always willing to embrace us, even through our shortcomings, and he's always ready to pick up his mission with us and march forward into the future with newfound passion and zeal to bring his kingdom wherever we are. And while our 21st century church has an abundance of knowledge and is often slow to action, the opposite is true of the first generation of Jesus followers. Acts chapter 4, verse 13 says, "They, the people, were amazed when they saw the boldness of Peter and John, for they could see that they were ordinary men with no special training in the Scriptures. They also recognized them as men who had been with Jesus." The first century church were a group of people, ordinary people with no special training, no special knowledge, no special experience, that were passionately following Jesus to bring his kingdom wherever they were. It makes us ask the question, what was the difference for them then? What made them committed, so committed to Jesus' mission? We see here in Acts chapter 2, that this is what the lifestyle, this is what the community of believers looked like in the first century. In Acts chapter 2, it says, "All the believers devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, and to sharing in meals, including the Lord's Supper, and to prayer. A deep sense of awe came over all of them, and the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders. And all the believers met together in one place and shared everything they had. They sold their property and possessions and shared the money with those in need. They worshiped together at the temple each day, met in homes for the Lord's Supper, and shared their meals with great joy and generosity, all the while praising God and enjoying the goodwill of all the people. And each day the Lord added to their fellowship those who were being saved." The first century church didn't have high levels of education, positions of authority or leadership and culture, or truly any historical framework to help guide their community. But though they lacked knowledge and tradition, they were a people truly changed by the work of Jesus and were driven with passion to serve each other and to change the world. So what does this mean for us as we carry on this legacy of a church that not just spends its time thinking about God or coming up with really cool ideas about God, but saying, I want to actively respond to what Jesus is calling me to? What does it mean for us? How can each of us actively respond to the call of Jesus? And what actions can we take to help us move from spectators to participants? I'm identifying three things as we land this series of discussions. How do we respond to God's mission for the church? I name three things that every one of us can put into practice right now that'll guide us to be participants, not just spectators. The first is this: take inventory of your beliefs about and actions toward the church. Ask yourself a few questions. I think if we're going to really respond to what Jesus is calling us to, we have to take inventory sometimes. Ask yourself, how have I viewed the church and my role within it? Ask, where have my concerns been simply about what I'm getting from the community rather than what I'm contributing to it? Ask yourself, have I fully owned the mission of the church, Jesus' mission, as my mission in life? And how am I actively working to build the kingdom of Jesus? I think if we're going to take an active step toward growth as participants, I need to take inventory. And two, actively participate in the community of Jesus. Give the institution lots of grace and love God's people authentically. I need to take an active role in the community. I need to share my knowledge, express my worship, and encourage my brothers and sisters around me. I need to develop unconditional love, not just for the individuals, but for the global community of the church. I need to care for it, I need to pray for it, and I need to actively find ways that I can serve it. We each need to actively participate in the community, give the institution lots of grace, and love God's people authentically. And three, How can I move from being simply a spectator to a participant? 3 is this: be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what Jesus did. It's an important note for all of us as we've talked through all these different facets of the church. Active participation doesn't mean I don't consume anything. This is what teachers and prophets are given to us for, right? This is what dinner with friends or lunch out with a brother or sister is all about. This is what the Eucharist or communion is centered on, a consumption of life that Jesus is offering to us. Jesus himself calls him the bread of life. Jesus said he would create a spring of living water within us. Consumption of the life Jesus gives is necessary for our walk with God. It's natural. But consuming information or emotional highs in a church gathering should not be our primary source of fulfillment. Organizations and sermons and altar calls are designed to enhance our connection to God, but they're not the primary way I grow in my faith and become more like Jesus. Remember, the church is the community of individuals who are each active apprentices, mentees, disciples of Jesus and his way. That is where true spiritual formation takes place, in my personal discipleship. The church is the community in which I share my journey with others, but it should be my personal mission of discipline and study and growth to be with Jesus, become like Jesus, and do what Jesus did. The church is the assembly of women, men, and children redeemed by Jesus, filled with his Spirit, and living in communion with him and each other in a way that reveals to the world the inbreaking reality of God's kingdom. That kind of community calls upon each of us to not be mere spectators, but participants.